I had the privilege and pleasure to meet Stefan Mantel and visit the World Soil Museum on one of my visits a couple of years ago. And I was really, really inspired by the museum and what you guys are doing. So it's really an honor to present now. In my presentation today, we'll talk something about two topics that seem unconnected, but actually they are. And even though it's scratching the surface, there's a lot to uncover. I hope it will leave you with some curiosity and you would be interested to dig more into the connection between soil and fashion. When I was 8 years old, I loved to play with dirt in my parents' garden in southern Russia. My parents are professional agronomists, and from early childhood, they taught me how to grow our own food, grow our own vegetables, and take care of our land. So over years, I studied ecology, first in school and high school. I wanted to understand how natural world works, and I received my first degree in, many years ago, 17 years ago or so, in Russia in ecology and nature management. And then I moved to New York City, where I did my doctorate degree. And then I lived in different states. And now I work for Purdue University in Indiana. And throughout this journey, I studied a lot of environmental pollution. And mostly it's with heavy metals and heavy metals and plants, how plant produce can actually uptake pollution into the tissues and how it can affect our human health. And throughout this research and reading, exploring, traveling, I developed curiosity of how we actually connected to fashion. And one of the reasons one is actually aha moment was about 10 years ago when I visited Mexico City for a conference on urban soil, and they took us to this creek, which is, you can see, extremely polluted. It's with trash, with clothes, discarded clothes, like lots of stuff, and not somewhere a typical tourist would go. And it made me wonder how our cities are actually polluted with all this clothes, textiles that we produce, and we don't know where it's going. And as I was growing up in a family of agronomists, the other part of the family is actually my grandmother. She was a seamstress, and she produced her own designs, right? She made her own clothes. Her mother used to make these beautiful head covers with knitted, and they were made of wool. And this wool came from sheep that my family also grew. So growing up in this very pristine rural environment where we produce food, where we essentially grew our clothes out of soil, it essentially led me to make these connections between soil and fashion in broader aspects. So today we will discuss this hidden connection between the two worlds that seem to be unrelated, but they are more related than we think. But a big part of it is to understand what is the fashion's soil footprint. We will see how it is connected through fiber production, mining and chemical inputs, waste and life consumption, and we will finish on a little positive note after looking all this pollution. What are the practices, what are the solutions, and regenerative alternatives? To begin with, we should look at a kind of overall map of what are different inputs that we have in textiles that are connected to soil. We have plant fiber, we have animal fiber, and lots of materials, minerals actually come from the earth as colorants and mordants. So cotton, flax, hemp, they grow in soil, obviously, and soil will affect the yield. The soil quality will affect the yield, fiber quality due to the content of nutrients, soil organic methods, soil texture, moisture, soil microbiota. Of course, conventional production can drive erosion, salinization, organic matter depletion, lots of loads of agrochemicals. On the bright side, if we...
Sorry for interrupting you. Yeah. We see only first slide.
Oh no, I'm on the fourth slide.
Yeah. It doesn't move.
Can you try sharing again?
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Is it, can you see this?
Yes. Yes.
So this was the Mexico image of the trash in the polluted creek and the roadmap, which I briefly described. And I'm on the fourth slide right now. Do you see plant, animal, mineral inputs?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, and don't feel bad to interrupt me. Feel free to to interrupt wherever you need. On the bright side, plant fiber could have a benefit to the soil if it's grown in regenerative systems when we take into account agroecology. And actually, it helps to build soil organic carbon, improve soil texture, and even biodiversity. Next type of fiber is animals like cashmere, wools, alpaca, and so on. Of course, soil supports pastures and rangelands that these grazing animals feed on. Pasture productivity and carrying capacity would depend on soil health. When we overstock and do like poor grazing management, it can cause vegetation loss, desertification, compaction of the soil with erosion as a consequence. But well managed grazing can enhance soil carbon aggregation and infiltration of the soil. And another component is actually lots of pigments, colors, dyes, clays, or ochres, iron oxides that are used in fashion industry, textile industry, that come from soil-related deposits from the earth, and they of course disturb soil and landscapes when we extract them. There's a lot of discharge and could be even a land application of this dye effluents that can accumulate in the soil and become toxic, and not only soil but also water. So what kind of statistics are we talking here? What it looks like the numbers behind modern fashion? Fast fashion, as we know, right? It's a rapid production of textiles and clothes, particular, that we produce more on a much larger scale and speed than we ever did. For example, the world buys about 80 billion new garments each year, which is 400% more than 20 years ago. Like in 2005, we were using it much, much less. The average American uses about 41 kilogram of textile waste annually. And then it comes to leather. Leather tanning is one of the most toxic stages in the fashion chain or supply chain. Tannin uses different minerals, like different salts, formaldehydes, coal tar derivatives, oils, dyes, and one of the big chemicals, like metals, is actually chromium that comes out, and we often can see this photos orange colors that come out of some leather tannins. So leather production is very resource intensive and requires a lot of water, fossil fuels, land, of course, and many of chemicals that are used in the production of the fashion and taxi and leather is non-degradable, non-biodegradable, and of course over time it accumulates in soil, in water, and this is what we are talking today. Here's a very simple contamination pathway, just to show how different aspects of this industry can pollute soil. One, it can come through direct industrial discharge. Right? Lots of chromium, for example, can come out of this leather tanners. It could come a lot of deposits through atmospheric pathways can precipitate on the surface and accumulate polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, lots of different heavy metals, dioxins. Then we also have sewage sludge or biosolids that apply to farmland. Different countries have different regulations. There are studies now show that biosolids contain a lot of like microplastics that can even go to some plants like tomatoes. One of the recent studies showed that tomatoes had microplastics in the tissue that were grown in biosolids that were containing this microfiber. And finally, contaminated irrigated water. Obviously, water can contain different metals depending on the source, and it could just also accumulate in the soil and spread downwards. In the next few slides, it might be a little bit depressing because we'll talk about ecological catastrophes, essentially. One of the large ones that is related to fashion or like textile industry overall, not just cotton is not just used for clothes, is RLC. You probably heard about it. It's in the Central Asia and currently in Uzbekistan. But in the 1960s, the Soviet Union, where this RLC was located, they were competing to become a number one leader or exporter of cotton. And they achieved this status by diverting two rivers, Amudarya and Sirdarya, from the RLC to the cotton fields. And as a result, you can see now, in 40 years later in 2000 and now 2024, this sea, which is technically, it's more like a lake, but they call it RLC, it shrank to a very small percentage of the water body that is left these days. And this caused not only the dryness of the water body, but also intensification of soil, salt salinization, because all this salt just evaporated and stayed behind. That would shift and would be transported with wind on a larger territory, affecting nearby towns and villages. It affected fishery because people couldn't fish anymore. There is no water to fish in. Overall, it caused desertification. It's already kind of quite a dry area, and essentially now it's considered as a ecological catastrophe because of this water diversion for cotton fields. Another example is in Indonesia. In North Sumatra, they have this controversial Indo-Ryan pulp and Ryan mill that was quite a few times cited for violations and pollution, including some problems with waste treatment and toxic discharge that damaged downstream ecosystems. Wood consumption topped 46 million cubic meters in 2022, driven by palm production in this area. Fast-growing eucalyptus and acacia plantations in Sumatra, Kalimantan now covers almost 3 million hectares, which is the size of Belgium, after a 30% expansion in 8 years. This growth converted about 1 million hectares of natural forest to monoculture, which is around 10% of Indonesia's primary forest loss since 2001. And here we can see satellite animation between 2017 to 2023, just 6 years, but we can see the drastic change of this reduction or clearance of primary forest to prepare for the monoculture of acacia planting. Another issue is overgrazing for cashmere production, essentially in Mongolia. This steppe, which are typically super productive, they experience too many goats and sheep that overgrazed on rangelands beyond the capacity of this land. And it causes vegetation losses, increased dust storm, accelerated erosion, and desertification on a very large territories. Now, what used to be super productive steppe, it becomes more of degraded land more and more. So it's quite disturbing. And another note is on production or extraction of gold or other like precious metals, silver, platinum, in diamonds, sapphire, rubies, all these gemstones, even iron oxides, ultramarine pigments. They're used for different aspects of fashion. Some of them could be used as jewelry, as accessories, while some of them used for dyeing and finishing and like some processing aids. And you can see on this photo in Madagascar in what conditions people have to work to extract these minerals. And when we look specifically in this mining processes, mining alters soils through physical disturbance, obviously. Topsoil is removed, vegetation is cleared, there's some excavation, maybe road building. All of this accelerate erosion and disrupt soil formation and hydrological function. The second pathway is waste generation. Waste rock, and especially tailings, can oxidize, acidify, and mobilize metals, creating long-term contamination risks for surrounding soils and groundwater. For fashion, these impacts are often especially displays the environmental burden of a dyed garment or gemstone accessories is frequently borne by communities living near mines, tailings, impoundments, or mineral processing zones rather than by consumers, right? So we, as end users, don't even know where our gold chain came from or diamond ring, but people who extract this highly affected. And soil impacts can also continue downstream in textile production, where dye and mordant residues, salts and sludge can enter agricultural soils through wastewater irrigation, leakage, land application. It can alter soil porosity, salinity, and soil biota. The soil footprint of fashion is not only agricultural, but it also affects landscapes. It essentially becomes like extractive landscapes, contaminated processing zones, and waste sinks produced by the mineral side of the supply chain. It's a huge the supply chain that affects landscapes. And some of these landscapes nowadays are even seen from this space. I could not believe when I saw this for the first time. And these images from Atacama Desert in Chile. As you can see, the satellite images from, I think, 2023, this closing dump, and a lot of this essentially clothes that is dumped there. It's a lot of imported secondhand, unsold fast fashion garments just dumped in this area. And it's growing to the point that we start seeing in satellite images. Most of these garments are synthetic, so they some of them could degrade, like weather away, releasing obviously microplastics, microfiber, dyes. Some of them could be burned, releasing a lot of toxins into the air, and it could cause not only air pollution but also environmental health impacts to people, like respiratory disease. Now, let's look at some scale. I'm sure you're like, oh my God, what is happening, right? So hold on, we'll get to some positive aspects soon, but let's look at some numbers. So the production scale. Global fiber production reached 113 million metric tons in 2021, which is up to 58 million in 2000 and nearly double in 2 decades. So we produce more and more fiber, right, globally. Cotton alone, it takes about 2.5% of the world cultivated land, which is accounted for 16% of insecticide use globally. Polyester, which is quite a dominant fiber these days, it's at 54% of production, is derived from fossil fuels, from petroleum. It does not biodegrade in soil, and at least on a human time scale, and it accumulates in the environment, in the soil, in the water, in wildlife. Even our human body as well these days, so we find more research related to it. In terms of chemical loading, textile industry uses about 8,000 synthetic chemicals in dyeing and finishing. 200,000 tons of textile dyes are lost to effluent annually around the world. And the most used class, azo dyes, it's about 60-70% of textile dyes, can break down in anaerobic soil condition into aromatic amines, many of which are carcinogenic and also persist in soil. In terms of land use, the textile fiber crop occupy about 35 million hectares globally, like cotton, flax, hemp, a grazing land for wool, cashmere, other animal fiber crops. It takes about 26% of Earth's ice-free land surface, which is 3.4 billion hectares. Waste standpoint, so 92 million metric tons of textile waste are generated around the world every year. The majority is landfilled or burned, incinerated. Synthetic fibers in landfill leach plasticizers, flame retardants, and dyes into surrounding soil, and also leachates. Also, what I found very interesting is thinking what comes out of our laundry. Right? Is when you dry your clothes in a laundry, just like a drying machine, we have to change the filter. And I was curious, and I want to test and see what comes out of this. It's just like a filter full of fiber, and where this fiber is going, right? Some of this is captured in that filter that we throw in the garbage, but a lot of it actually washes away from our clothes and dumps into the environment. So we often think that textile pollution is ocean problem, but a large portion ends up in the soil. When we wash synthetic clothes, these fibers are released and they enter wastewater. The wastewater treatment plants remove lots of different particles, but instead of destroying them, they concentrate them in a sewage sludge, also known as biosolids. These biosolids are commonly used as agricultural land application as a fertilizer because it has nutrients, and it creates a direct pathway from our washing machines to soil ecosystems. Once in the soil, microfibers do not behave as inert debris. Experiments show that they can alter soil physical properties, like impacting soil aggregation, soil structure, pore space, how water moves and retained in the soil profile. They can also interact with biological systems. Microplastics can shift microbial community composition and affect enzyme activity involved in nutrient cycling. Soil fauna is also affected. For example, earthworms can ingest microfibers that can affect their growth, behavior, and their role in soil mixing and their essential ecosystem service as engineers, right? We call them ecosystem engineers that might affect their role in soil mixing and organic matter turnover. Another impact is that microplastics can act as carriers. Their surfaces can absorb heavy metals and persistent organic chemicals, potentially changing how those contaminants move and become available in soils. Soil is not only a waste problem, it becomes a big soil health issue, influencing physical structure, biological cycling processes, contaminant dynamics in the system that grow our food. And another interesting dynamics, the different process, is the chemistry that actually in our clothes. So we talked about laundering, right? What else comes out of this, of our clothes? Durable and especially like water repellent or stain repellent technologies have historically relied on forever chemicals, right? PFAS, including fluorotelmer-based polymers. These compounds provide excellent oil and water repellency, but it actually has environmental impact because they're very persistent in the environment. They're resistant to biodegradation and highly mobile. Residual monomers, side chain degradation products, and processing aids can be released during laundering and enter wastewater systems. Textile dyeing and finishing also introduce additional chemical classes like azo dyes, aromatic amines formed through dye breakdown, and metal complexes. Metal complex dyes are quite widely spread. Some dye structures incorporate metals like chromium or copper as part of coordination complexes. Beyond dyes themselves, processing involves mordants, fixative, surfactants, and finishing agents, which contribute additional organic contaminants to textile effluents. During our washing, a fraction of the substrates partitions into wash water. Again, wastewater treatment plants are designed to remove solids and many hydrophobic or particle-associated contaminants, but they do not fully degrade all of these compounds. And a lot of this, again, go into biosolids or sewage sludge that is then applied to agricultural fields. And some of these compounds are very persistent, bioaccumulative even. PFAS are especially concerned, and nowadays we see more and more information about PFAS due to their chemical stability and evidence that some chain lengths can be taken up by plants and would depend on the soil property. Aromatic amine derivatives can be toxic to soil organisms. And residues of metal-containing dyes can contribute to trace metal loadings in soil. This pathway shows that textile chemistry does not remain confined to garments or wastewater streams. It becomes really integrated in the whole terrestrial biogeochemical system, and it affects plant growth, microbial processes, and overall long-term soil health. Here we can see another diagram of ecological consequences of dye-contained textile effluent, that it affects food chain, ecosystems, ecological balance. Dyes can damage root system of the plants, decrease photosynthesis, protein content, growth rate, can raise the level of antioxidant activities and peroxidants of lipids. In the air, it can release toxic gases, oxides of sulfur and nitrogen, even formaldehyde and other volatile compounds. We can see that in the water, again, it's reducing overall like oxygen levels, so it might cause the hypoxia or anoxia, would affect animal life, alter enzymatic activities, and overall affect microorganisms, aquatic microorganisms, decrease their metabolic activities, disrupt plant growth, it also says decrease protein production and levels of required essential for their well-being. So there's a lot of impact that is happening because of dye industry in this big textile world that comes out of the production. And we use all sorts of different dyes, and azo dyes is like the most common one, 60 to 70%. What happens to human health? We can see that textile dyes can get into human body by like ingestion or inhalation. I would assume you don't chew your clothes, right? But it's more relevant to like children who do like licking or chewing wherever they take. Inhalation can come from those microfibers that are redistributed, and it affects our system in many different ways. For example, nervous system. It damages neurons, potential neurodegenerative disease. It can increase the cell damage due to oxidative stress. It might affect mood, cognitive alterations, affect taste, smell, or even vision, and it might have potential carcinogenic effects. Liver cell damage and dysfunction can trigger liver inflammation, could cause some risk of liver cancer development, could accumulate in liver tissues, and similar problems could be in kidneys. It could accumulate in kidney, cause potentially cancer, reduce kidney filtration efficiency. When we talk about a reproductive system, the textile dyes could disrupt testosterone and different hormones, impact prostate function and health, increased risk of cancer that can directly affect reproductive health. Then we go to skin. It's different allergies can be caused, irritation and rashes, risk of cancer, skin cancer as well. Enzymatic system, textile dyes that are ingested or inhaled can disrupt enzyme-controlled hormones, potentially could generate harmful metabolic byproducts, and could cause damage to enzyme-inducing cells. And we can go even deeper, which is kind of scary, human chromosomes. It can cause damage to the genetic materials, induce mutations in DNA, leading to structural changes in chromosomes, interfering with DNA replication processes, and affect normal cell cycle regulation and division. So there are some recent discoveries. You can see the paper came out just last year to look at all this negative impact of textile dyes that affect human health quite negatively. Of course, it doesn't mean that we all get all of these issues, but this shows that what could be potentially happen if we wear certain clothes of materials that are, maybe dyed with those unhealthy dyes, with repellents and PFAS and so on, that could cause some of these issues. I'm often asked how long does it take for clothes to decompose, and I think here's a few examples of how long it takes. And it's just to demonstrate the difference, because it depends on the environment, depending soil and climate, these numbers might shift. But for comparison, cotton will take a week or maybe several months. Of linen, about a couple weeks. Denim, up to a year. Bamboo, a little over a year. Silk, couple years to decompose. Wool, 1 to 5 years to decompose. Rubber, 50 to 80 years to decompose. Nylon, 30 to 40 years to decompose. Polyester, more than our life length is up to 200 years, and spandex will never decompose. And that's, will stay in the environment. Interesting fact that only 1% of clothes is recycled every year. And we see a lot of recycling shops popping up here and there, but overall it's a very, very small fraction that is actually get recycled. 15% of used textiles are shipped overseas, in poor countries, most commonly, where the materials often end up in landfills, or they burn them. So it just causes environmental damages, like we saw an example of desert in Chile. So now let's talk about positive things. So we saw all these negative things, but there are some solutions that we can do. And it brings us to soil practices, regenerative agriculture. And I'm sure you've heard the term before. And regenerative agriculture is essentially just a couple examples. It's when farmers plant different crops in cycles to replenish soil nutrients. For example, rotating cotton with legumes like clover or veg improves nitrogen levels naturally. Cover crops like winter rye, crimson clover protect soil health between planting seasons. It reduces erosion, suppressing weeds, adds organic matter. These crops also help break down compacted soil, making soil more fertile and ready for the next fiber crop. Reducing disturbance helps preserve its structure, enabling better water retention and microbial activity, which of course supports a stronger and more durable, more resilient fiber plants. These practices increase yields and reduce the need for harmful chemicals. They also have broader environmental benefits, like capturing carbon and mitigating climate change. And when we use the regenerative agricultural practices for fashion, we nowadays call it regenerative fashion, essentially something that is good for the environment, not destructive as a conventional fashion, especially fast fashion. And this transition has already been happening. There are companies that are already using regenerative agricultural practices. I'm not advertising any of them, just to show these companies already exist, and people care about, in companies, particular brands care about the materials they use. For example, the North Face company, they use materials that come from farms, focusing on restoring soil health and carbon sequestration. 3 years ago, they launched an apparel line made with climate-conscious cotton from American farmers. Patagonia, they support farmers who grow cotton using regenerative organic certified practices. At the same time, Eileen Fisher uses merino wool that makes a positive impact, and they work with farmers that use grazing practices that are holistic, not harmful, or minimize harm to the soil, that help draw down carbon from the atmosphere and restore soil health and biodiversity. So I hope there will be more companies like that, and also be able to produce clothes that is affordable to buy. So I mentioned the regenerative fashion term, and I think it's worth to compare the other two labels, terms commonly associated with the fashion. It's a sustainable fashion, circular fashion, right, and regenerative fashion. So what makes sustainable fashion? It's a reduction of harm or impact. That's their primary goal, is the whole value chain, the focus on the whole value chain, and reduction of potential or actual impact. They strive to use better materials, be more efficient, to create different certifications, fair labor, and this type of fashion is still sort of linear, right? They could create a waste. And circular fashion is the next step. When they keep products and materials in use, so it's more like a loop, it's not linear. They challenge the idea, take, make, waste, and they focus on design, use, and end-of-life phases. Their designs are focused for durability, reuse, repair, recycling. They're not, in terms of justice, they don't focus that much, but maybe partially focused on justice. While regenerative fashion is the next level after this, where the idea is to create net positive ecological and social outcomes. The companies would focus on upstream land use and whole system change, would include a lot of these regenerative practices, agricultural practices, restoration of environment, of ecosystems, community regeneration. They definitely challenge the idea of linearity and waste, and try to avoid or minimize extractivism from the sources, right? So this mining would not take place in regenerative fashion. They would rather recycle metals that are already out in the world. And regenerative fashion actually focuses a lot on the justice aspects, and they produce or strive to create equal opportunities for workers, for farmers, and work truly with communities. And on the last few slides, I just want to see if I can, oh, maybe it doesn't let me open it. Anyhow, I wanted to tell you, to show you, if you're curious to learn more about what I do in terms of environmental pollution and a little bit of travel. I travel a lot and I share what I learn on my travels from environmental perspective. And this video I put here, it's just a 1-minute short and reel, is about a textile museum in Prato, Italy, which is considered as a textile capital of Europe. And I was very impressed to see this another amazing museum where they actually showed a lot of things that I shared with you today. And you can even touch some of specimens. You can see behind me there was like a board with different textiles, fibers. Some of them you can touch. It's really cool. You can actually feel the difference of different fibers. But they showed not only how textile industry was developing in Italy, but also what it looks like for sustainable practices and regenerative fashion practices. So it was a little inside of this museum. If you ever get a chance to go to Prato, it's outside of Florence, I definitely recommend you visiting this really unique museum that tells a story of textile and farmers and water and soil and plants and all of these great things that we talk about. Okay, final couple thoughts. Degraded soil actually have reduced capacity to sequester carbon, right? We know that it will affect water infiltration and even food production. So the IPCC report estimated land degradation that includes agriculture practices reduced terrestrial carbon uptake by 10 to 14% compared to pre-industrial conditions, right? So like 150 years, we made a huge difference. And the fashion industry is a big contributor to these changes in land degradation. We saw before the number or hectares that occupied for cotton production or even grazing. Research also shows that transition, it is on a positive note, transitioning cotton and wool production to regenerative practices can increase soil organic carbon by 0.9 to 1.6 tons of carbon hectare per year in the first 5 years. I hope you start wondering, what can we do in our personal level? Well, we need to learn first, and I think awareness is a big step of making the changes. And when we buy things for our homes, for our closets, we need to consider brand sustainability, their claims. So very often there is a greenwashing. So we need to look into the brands that work with farmers, providing all the farmers who focus on soil health, and also brands that considering soil health and not just water or carbon that we often see. Of course, it is important, but we need to dig deeper. Fiber choices also matter. How fibers are grown matter even more than which fiber is grown, right? We can grow a small amount of something sustainably or regeneratively, which will be better for the environment than grow, I don't know, organic cotton, but it might be detrimental and depending on resources went through. So we need to be aware of the fiber and how this fiber was grown, what resources went to produce it. And number one thing is we need to reduce consumption. So we understand now the connection between our fashion choices, the textile production, and we need to reduce the consumption to use less of these garments. No fiber system is sustainable at 100 billion garments per year, right? So we need to make better choices. And if you want to learn more what on personal choices you can make and learn a little more about my story and my suggestions for your wardrobe that could save the planet. I invite you to watch this TEDx talks. It's only 14 minutes. Using QR code, you can scan a YouTube video and watch it in your spare time. I would be happy to hear from you what you think, and if you could share with your friends, colleagues, families, leave a comment. It would help me a lot to see where interest lie and if I should, pursue this topic even further. I thank you so much for giving me the time and the floor to share this passion of mine, to connect soil and fashion and dig into some numbers with you today. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing and I'll take the questions.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for the interesting and informative presentation.
Thank you.
I may start with the people in room if you have a question, and then we will move to the chat and online. Any questions?
Well, on the part of like environmental law and laws that are made internationally, is there anything regarding fashion and environmental disaster? Are there new laws coming up? Oh, do you know anything?
Great question. In Europe, there are. I'm not on the policy side, and I read some things, and a lot comes out from actually European Union. I think France has lots of laws, and recently they even have this. Oh my gosh! Like they're providing a subsidy to people if they want to repair their clothes, rather than like buying new things. And they are having like new policies against like ultra fast fashion, like Shein, from like China, the company. So I think the EU is forefront of making those changes. I don't see that changes happening in America yet. So, but I think the conversations are starting, it's a country based.
Yeah, good to know.
Thank you very much, and also for the presentation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming. I'm really flattered that you're interested in this.
Thank you very much. Any other questions in the room? No. I have one myself. Maybe you cannot see me. I have you. I have one myself. I know that recently you also participate in the IUSS Congress in China. Did you also present same topic and how people received it? If you did the same, anything to share from there? Because I believe you met a wider audience or scientists, let's say.
No, that's a great question. I haven't. I was presenting my research on urban parks actually in Chicago. I was going to my technical research that was done with my former master student in Chicago. So it was different topic, essentially related topic on environmental pollution, but not fashion related. It's hard to find scientific, at least in the countries that I attend, a good fit into this. I think in my opinion, academic conferences do not have a platform for this. And this is the reason why I also created my own platform, House of Soil. You're welcome to just Google House of Soil and see my website, and also connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn, where I share more research or more insights, where I try to push this knowledge essentially to broader audiences. And I would really love to connect with brands, because we scientists understand a lot of this. And I think brands could use help of scientists that I'm well connected to help to bridge this gap of knowledge. And actually could be cool projects. My big idea would be to connect scientists and brands, so we can have some cool creative ideas for new generation of scientists to work. So no, IUSS was a great conference. I did not present it there, but you gave me an idea. Maybe I should present it at the EGU next year. Maybe it would be a good platform, because but it's hard to fit in this topic on the current agendas. So unless I create my own symposium, so maybe this is something we could consider with ISRIC, is to have our joint symposium and invite people to talk about this, including brands, including European, maybe brands, at the next big conference, wherever it will be. I'm happy to come in person to the Netherlands, just a call away.
And I'm not sure if you are aware also of this microplastic research at Wageningen University.
No.
Okay, maybe it's something also for you to look at it. I know there's a very big group at Wageningen University, environmental science group, that
Okay.
working on microplastic contamination in soil.
Mhm.
And I think it's also it's like the sources of this microplastic and how much it also affect the soil, plants, animal, and human health, just like you presented. So maybe you can also connect with them, and we can follow up after this.
I would love that. Yes.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
also feel free, Anna, to put maybe the website on the chat for
Oh yes, that's a good idea.
and any other links you would like to share. I have to move back to see the questions online. Sorry.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Yes.
So, like 1 month ago or so, we had an event here at Board that was called Soils and Board, and one of the sessions was about carbon sequestration. I am not soil scientist. I'm more like a technical person. I do programming. But then one of the discussions was that there were people in the room that knows a lot, like the whole research in the life scope to carbon sequestration, and some of them had really like positions like this is not really helping us in the long term, because they were explaining that once the farmers stop the practices that goes to improve the carbon sequestration, then that carbon is lost. So they say, like, is this really something that is worth investing if they stop, like, then that build that works is lost, like, in time. And then it was very interesting to me when you were presenting that you were presenting these brands, and all of them were focusing on carbon sequestration. And I think, like, if this is not sustainable in time, because every government comes with certain budget for certain practices, and once that a government changes or the goal changes, and that budget goes away, and then the practices are not there anymore, then why are there, like, is this the easiest thing for the companies
To measure.
greenwash the image? Because I think, at least from my few knowledge about this, the best would be to look at the production chain and try to improve, like, reduce the contamination and or the everything that is wrong in every step, basically, rather than just it's easy to invest in carbon sequestration. So what do you know about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is something I've been thinking too, because when I attend a lot of conversations on even regenerative agriculture who are not scientists, more like companies and even farmers, they do focus mostly on carbon. And I've heard this phrase from someone who said, like, well, we only need to measure carbon. It's the most important thing to measure. And then that person looked at me and was like, well, I know as a soil scientist you will say more, but I was like, yeah, there's a whole thing. I can give you a lecture on what needs to be measured. But I think the point is that it's hard to measure absolutely everything, and this is the method currently is used to evaluate like just the carbon is to evaluate sustainability and make it essentially cheaper to measure. But I don't think it also sustainable over time. And then you picked up a well, and like policies change and governments shift their priorities, and we need to focus holistically on soil health and measure multiple things, and not just that. So and this is part again why we need to educate more people about soil health overall, and one parameter is not enough, even if it's such an important thing as carbon sequestration.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you, Anna. We have another question. You have another question? Yeah, we take online. Okay, I wanted to take the questions in the room first, and then, but that's fine. Yeah, I think people leaving online. So we have several questions, I guess, online. Okay, somebody says, okay, this is for ISRIC. What are the key rules of ISRIC in soil conservation practices now, and any of the ISRIC ongoing project to control? Anyone from ISRIC want to answer that, please?
If I may, please fill in if I forget something. Our core role at ISRIC is not really related to microplastics in soil, but we have several projects focusing indirectly on it. So if we look at soil health, microplastics are taken into account as well, of course. And if we look at measures against it to reduce the amount of, for example, let's say contamination in total, we can look at WorldCat and other projects where they actually include sustainable land management practices to reduce certain soil health risks, such as contamination, including microplastic contamination.
Yeah, just to add, this week also actively participates in development of this European policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are looking at soil threats, but in practice, no, not really, not going to field and not that kind of work.
Yeah, so indirectly, yes. Yeah. Okay, let me go to the second question. Yeah, people were leaving, and then thank you for the interesting presentation, Anna. And there is a question again from same person, Asia Naim. Say, is there any law that is currently abide by leather industries not to pollute soil and water bodies? Do you know something like that, Anna? Can you?
Well, I think they are country-based. Like in the US, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, regulates tanneries under it's like leather tanning, finishing, effluent guidelines, something like that. And they would specify allowable levels of toxic metals, maybe like sulfides, wastewater solids. EU, I'm sure, also has some perhaps even stricter guidelines for that. But when it comes to like some other countries, I know someone recently defended the dissertation work with Peru, and they have like a lot of chromium leaching to the water body, and her work was creating a filter made of biochar that came out of textile, by the way, like a clean textile that she converted into biochar that's used to filter chromium from leather tanners. So in some other countries, it's still happening. And there are some solutions like this in new engineering solutions that could be adopted. I think it's very promising. So a new wave of scientists, I think, will have fun creating different tools and methods how we can clean up the earth. At least that's what I hope for.
Well, thank you very much. That's clear. I went through the other chats and they all thank you for the very interesting and outstanding presentation. And people say that it's really worth reflecting on and following up. So thank you very much. And I don't know, Divya, do you have a question, follow-up question?
Okay, but if there's time.
Yeah, of course, yes. I think it will be the last one then close, yeah.
No, I think it's a very important topic because it's about behavioral choices that we make, and what we wear is one of them. But at the same time, and I agree that it needs to be more, not just connected scientists and companies, but also raising awareness among consumers. In my perspective, I think this is something very important, but it's also important to understand what kind of drivers, the designers and the companies have when it comes to sustainability or adopting regenerative practices. Like you said, regenerative sometimes feels like greenwashing, and then you have carbon footprint, carbon sequestration. Carbon footprint, in my opinion, had been a bit more successful when it comes to products to show their impact. Carbon sequestration is kind of embedded within it. But also in my personal, when I go to buy clothes, I also try to look, okay, and I know that there are now, you can look at the sustainability reports, but then you look at the costs. I also find that there are some brands where you can actually exchange the clothes. So they take the clothes back and you can buy more. But if you compare the cost, it feels like not everyone can afford it. So I think making these concepts more visible is needed. But did you have any of these kinds of experiences talking to brands or people, whether it's not really a question, but more about curiosity about your personal experience when you talk to people, what kind of concerns or challenges they mention?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know if I have the right answer, but it all drives by money, right? And health, essentially. If people see perhaps more, they might less concerned about environmental health unless they're environmental scientists, but they might concern about health of their kids or themselves. So we bring awareness more what these dyes could do to us. I think it might change people's behavior. Or of course, how much it costs. The reason why fast fashion has become so popular is because designers figure out how to design all those clothes at a very fast and cheap way, right? And people are not willing to pay more for good quality. And this is another behavior shift. And I think a lot of cultural aspects. In some cultures, it's more than the others. I personally prefer quality over quantity. I would rather fit into it than buy multiple things, because we just how my parents raised me, like my grandmother who would make clothes, and I knew how much effort it would go to it. So I would personally invest in a better quality, more natural fiber or fabric than just buying multiple cute short not short cute I don't know, summer dresses. And a lot of people just don't know what we know and what even alone in this presentation, and we need to talk more about it and have even potentially like influencers, some celebrities talk about this, because people don't listen to scientists, they listen to social media. And I think, unfortunately, we need to find where people are and speak on their language to make connections that otherwise wouldn't be seen. And I'm hopeful that the brands are turning more and more, like now there is a lot of ban for fur, at least in the fashion weeks. Like Europe is really big on that. So I think there is a movement towards it's like movement towards slow fashion, but it's hard. Some people may not like this, not like to be told what to do, right? So it's very hard to change people behavior, and what we can do is to share what we know and see what we we'll see what comes out with education comes first.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you very much. I think I will read the last thing in the chat and then we may close for today's lecture. So we have a comment from Dr. Hadiza saying, regarding regulation in Nigeria, we have various agencies and organizations saddled with the responsibilities of regulations, industrial pollution, but the problem is on the sanctioning and monitoring, which are not effective, and some of these laws have not been received for a very long time. Reviewed, sorry, for a very long time. Yeah, very clear. Thank you very much. And Asia asking again if you can please abbreviate PFAS. And oh yeah, you did it already. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think this is it. Well, thank you very much, Anna, for joining us, for your time and also the interesting topic, informative presentation. And I also thanks massively our guests online and in the room for participating today, and wish you all a nice day. Thanks, Anna, once again. And we shall connect more on the microplastic later.
I'll be happy to collaborate. Thank you so much for having me today. It was really my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.